So, good morning. I'm Divine Grace in SBS Community third year. I will be explaining to you 5 articles of the revised penal code in book 2. So, the first article that I will be sharing to you is the Article 149 of the revised penal code, which is the indirect assaults. So, Article 149 indirect assaults, the penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods, and a fine not exceeding 100,000 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who shall make use of force or intimidation upon any person coming to the aid of the authorities or their agents on compassion of the commission of any of the crimes defined in the next preceding article. So there are elements of uh, the indirect assault. So the first element is about that a person in authority or PIA or his agent personnel in authority is the victim of any of the forms of direct assault defined in Article 148. So there are two kinds of forms of direct assault. So direct assault of the first form and direct assault of the second form. So this means that whether the first form of direct assault or second form assault must first be committed. So either against a person in authority or against an agent of a person in authority. So before a crime of direct assault can exist, meaning to say the crime of direct assault is a condition sine qua non to the existence of the crime of indirect assault, because as you may have already noticed, there would be no reason for the person to help, defend, or rescue a person in authority or his agent if there is no assault against such person in authority or his agent in the first place. So, the second element is a person comes to the aid of such authority or his agent. So, example. So this is what I am talking about earlier now. Earlier. So now the person who comes to the aid of a person in authority or an agent person in authority may be a private person or a public officer. Who must not be who must not be a person in authority or an agent person in authority. So take note of the scope of the meaning of the word person. He may be a private person, so meaning a private individual or civilian or a public officer. So but this public officer who comes to the aid of a person in authority or his agent person in authority must not be a person in authority or an agent person in authority himself. So because if the person who comes to the aid of a person in authority or an agent person in authority is also a person in authority or an agent himself, then the crime will no longer be in the indirect assault but direct assault. So dili na siya matawag og indirect assault, adto na siya sa direct assault. So for example, Jose shot Pedro as fiscal. So fiscal si usa ka fiscal or usa ka prosecutor si Pedro. So Pedro is considered as or considered or a fiscal is considered a person in authority. So si Pedro is isa siya ka person in authority. So while the latter was interviewing client inside his office. So now let us assume that Jose knew Pedro to be a fiscal. So ato i-assume nga si Jose kahibaw siya nga si Pedro is a fiscal or a prosecutor, a person in authority. So and it is a very clear clear from from this example that Pedro was performing his functions as a prosecutor. So he was in the performance of his functions as a prosecutor. So now, thereafter, Juan who saw shot Juan who saw Jose shot Pedro, Juan being a policeman. So nakita si Juan ni Pedro nga gipusil ni Jose. So Juan being a policeman, so si Juan usa siya ka policeman, so person in authority Japan. So was in uniform at that time, and you already know that the police is an agent person in authority. So Juan, a policeman, tried to help Pedro. So Jose likewise shot Juan upon seeing that Juan came to aid of Pedro. So if the person who came to the aid of a person in authority is also an agent person in authority himself, then the assault on Juan or the assault of the person has a policeman who came to aid of a person in authority will no longer be an indirect assault, sorry, or it will already be a crime of direct assault. Why? Because the person who came to the aid is also a person in authority. So, ito siya. So, next article is the article of 146 of Revised Penal Code. So, the next article that I will be explaining is the article 146 of the Revised Penal Code in Book 2. So, the crime of illegal assemblies. So, the penalty of a prison correctional in its maximum period to prison mayor in its medium period shall be imposed upon the organizers or leaders of any meeting attended by armed persons for the purpose of committing any of the crimes punishable under this code. So, or of any meeting in which the audience is incited to the commission of the crime of treason, rebellion, or insurrection, sedition, or assault upon a person in authority or his agents. Person merely present at such meeting shall suffer the penalty of arresto mayor, unless they are armed, in which case the penalty shall be uh, prison correctional. If any person present at the meeting carries an unlicensed firearm, it shall be presumed that the purpose of said meeting, in so far as he is concerned, is to commit acts punishable under this code. So, and he shall be considered a leader or organizer of the meeting within the purview of the preceding paragraph. So, as used in this article, the word meeting shall be understood to include a gathering or a group, whether in fixed place or moving. So, there are two kinds of illegal meeting. So, the first kind of illegal meeting is any meeting attended by armed persons for the purpose of committing any of the punishable under the code. So, what are the elements of the first kind of illegal assemblies? So, the first element of the first kind of illegal assembly is there is a meeting, a gathering, or a group of persons, whether in a fixed place or moving. And the second element of the first kind of illegal assembly is the meeting is attended by armed persons. And the last one is the purpose of the meeting is to commit any of the crimes punishable under the code. So, hence, the word meeting used in this article simply means that an assembly of people for discussion. And from the article itself, it includes a gathering of people, a gathering of personalities, or a group of persons assembled together for the purpose of committing any of the crimes punishable under the revised penal code. So it is not required that all persons in the meeting must be armed. But there must be at least four armed male factors. So there is no specification as to what kind of arms is required. Hence, it is submitted that bringing of bladed weapons is enough to come under the article. So, while it is true that persons merely present at such meeting are liable, there must still be evidence that said persons attended the meeting for the purpose of committing any of the crimes under the revised penal code. Now, if the attendance of the person at such meeting was only incidental, meaning he has no criminal intent or he had no knowledge whatsoever that the purpose of the meeting is to commit any of the crimes punishable under the revised penal code, then there is no violation. So wala siya violation nga nabuhat. Kay kung naman siya, wala man siya criminal intent or wala siya kalibutan kung unsa ni about ang meeting. And of course, the purpose of the meeting must be to commit any crime under the revised penal code. Hence, if the purpose is to commit a crime punished under a special law, the article is not applicable, meaning to say there is no crime committed under one force or is no of illegal assembly. So, let's proceed to the second kind of illegal assembly. So, the second kind of illegal assembly is any meeting in which the audience, whether armed or not, is incited to the commission of the crime of treason, rebellion, or insurrection, sedition, or assault upon a person in authority or his agents. So, there are two elements of the second kind of illegal assembly. So, the first is there is a meeting, a gathering, or group of persons, whether in a fixed place or moving. And the second one is the audience, whether armed or not, is incited to the commission of the crime treason, rebellion, or insurrection, sedition, or direct assault. So, for the second kind of illegal assembly, the crimes are specified, not just any crime punished under the revised penal code, but only the crimes of the treason, rebellion, or insurrection, sedition, or direct assault. So for the second kind of illegal assembly, take note that mere meeting of unarmed persons for the purpose or inciting others to commit the crime of treason, rebellion, or insurrection, sedition, or assault upon a person in authority or his agents. So, again, for purposes of the second kind of illegal assembly, there must be actual incitement of the audience attending in such meeting. The audience must be actually incited. So, if in a meeting the audience is incited to commit rebellion, insurrection, or sedition, then the crimes committed are not just illegal assembly as regards the organizers and persons present at such meeting, but there is also a crime of inciting to rebellion, insurrection, or inciting to sedition insofar as one making the incitement is considered. So, if armed persons attending the meeting, even if there is no actual incitement yet, the organizers and persons present will still be liable for the crime of illegal assembly, not under the second kind, but this time under the first kind of illegal assembly. Now, if the person present at the meeting, whether of the first or second kind, carries an unlicensed firearm, it shall be presumed that the purpose of the meeting, insofar as that person carrying a firearm is concerned, is to commit acts punishable under the revised penal code, and that he will be considered an organizer or a leader of such meeting. So let's proceed to the next article, Article 147 of the revised penal code in Book 2. So the title is Illegal Assassinations. So the penalty of a prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 200,000 pesos shall impose upon the founders, directors, and presidents of associations totally or partially organized for the purpose of committing any of the crimes punishable under this code or for some purpose contrary to public morals. So, mere members of said associations shall suffer the penalty of arresto mayor. So, dissecting of the illegal associations. So, the first is those totally or partially organized for the purpose of committing any of the crimes under the revised penal code. And The second one is those totally or partially organized for some purpose contrary to public morals. So as you can see here, there are two kinds of illegal associations as defined in Article 147 to repeat. So akong balikan to repeat, they are those totally or partially organized for the purpose of committing any of the crimes under the various penal code. And the second one is those totally or partially organized for some purpose contrary to public morals. So in the same article of 147, the persons liable for the crime of illegal associations, whether of the first or the second kind, are the founders, directors, and president of the association, as well as the members of the association. So now, for us to proper understand the phrase associations totally or partially organized for the purpose of committing any of the crime under the revised penal code. So take note that even if one of the purposes of the association is a legal one, like for example helping victims of natural calamities, but at the same time the money used to help these victims of calamity comes from the proceeds of theft or robbery, then the crime is still committed. Because as you can see in the phrase I just discussed a while ago, it refers to associations partially organized for the purpose of committing any of the crimes under the revised penal code. So, if the purpose of the association is to commit any of the crimes punished under special penal laws, then the article is not applicable. There is no violation of Article 147. Why? Because Article 147 specifically states that it should only refer to the crimes under the revised penal code, not under the special penal laws. So, what about the phrase totally or partially organized for some purpose, contrary to public morals? So, I am referring to the second purpose of the contrary to second kind of illegal associations. So, but before that, let us define what public moral is. So, public morals refers to the moral and ethical standard enforced in a given society. So, as applied to public life and as applied to the conduct of a person in public places, so it means not only the regulation of sexual matters, but also matters of dress and nudity, so including pornography. Now, why do I say applied to public life? So, because when there is an overt act that is shown to the public, and if the overt act contravenes the moral and ethical standards enforced in society, like the Philippines or Philippine society, then that act goes against public morals. So, for example, in Philippine society, so we do not subscribe to nudity in public places. That way, any person who is seen walking without any clothes in public places, that the act of that person walking naked is clearly contrary to public morals. Now, if there is an association whose purpose is contrary to the public morals, who advocates nudity in public places, then that association may be or could be charged under the Article 147 of the Revised Penal Code. So, next article that I will be explaining is the Article 150 of the Revised Penal Code in Book 2. So, disobedience to summons issued by the National Assemblies, committees or subcommittees by the constitutional commissions, its committees, subcommittees, or divisions. So, the penalty of arresto mayor or a fine ranging from 40,000 to 200,000 pesos or both such fine and imprisonment shall be imposed upon any person who, having been duly summoned to attend as a witness before the National Assembly, its special or standing committees and subcommittees, the constitutional commissions and its committees, subcommittees, or divisions, or before any commission or committee, chairman or member authorized to summon witnesses refuses without legal excuse to obey such summons or being present before any such legislative or constitutional body or official, refuses to be sworn or placed under affirmation or to answer any legal inquiry or to produce any books, papers, documents, or records in his possession, when required by them to do so in the exercise of their functions, the same penalty shall be imposed upon any person who shall restrain another from attending as a witness, or who shall induce disobedience to a summon or refusal to be sworn by any such body or official. So, these are the punishable acts of Article 150. So, first punishable act is refusing without legal excuse to obey the summons of Congress, or I'm referring to the Senate or the House of the Representatives, the Constitutional Commissions, or the I'm referring to the COMELEC or Commission of Authority, and the CSC, and by any commission or committee chairman or member authorized to summon witnesses. So, for example, like the LTFRB, it is a body that has the power to issue subpoenas or summons requiring persons to appear before such body in relation to the franchising of a public convenience, or committee chairman or member authorized to common witnesses. So, the second punishable act is refusing to be sworn or placed under affirmation before such bodies. And the third punishable act is refusing to answer any legal inquiry or to produce any books, papers, etc. in his possession when required to do so in the exercise of their functions. And the fourth is restraining another from attending as a witness in such bodies. And the fifth one is inducing disobedience to a summons or refusal to be sworn by any such body or official. So, the key phrase to the first punishable act of Article 150, conversely, an example of illegal excuse is when the persons so summons cannot appear before the Congress or before the Constitution of Commissions or before any committee that has the power to issue summons because or for health reasons. Now, when you say summons, this is the written order requiring a person to appear before such bodies. The refusal not to be valid must be with legal excuse. Now, if there is no, or the person summoned to appear cannot offer a valid and or legally excused, why? So he failed to obey the summons. Then he will be, or he might be charged under the punishable act of the Article 150. And the second punishable act of the Article 150, refusing to be sworn or placed under affirmation before such bodies. When you say to be sworn or to be placed under affirmation, it means that the person summoned before he proceeds to testify must take an oath. So an oath is an attestation by which a person signifies that he is bound in conscience to perform an act faithfully and truthfully. So, whether you are a believer of God or not, so before you take the witness stand, you must take an oath. So, it involves the idea of calling on God to witness what is averred as truth, and it is supposed to be the accompanied accompanied with an invocation of his vengeance or a renunciation of his favor. In the event of this falsehood, hence, the reason why the person summoned to testify before such bodies must be sworn in is in the event that he makes a false testimony, he can be held liable for perjury under the article of 183. So let's proceed to the next article. So article number 156 of the revised penal code. So the crime of delivering prisoners from jail. So the penalty of arresto mayor in its maximum period, the prison correctional in its minimum period shall be imposed upon any person who shall remove from any jail or penal establishment any person confined therein or shall help the escape of such person by means of violence, intimidation, or bribery. So, if other means are used, the penalty of arresto mayor shall be imposed. If the escape of the prisoner shall take place outside of said establishments by taking the guards by surprise, the same penalties shall be imposed in their minimum period. So these are the elements of the Article 156. So the first element is that there is a person confined in a jail or penal establishment. So the person here being referred to in the first element may be a detention prisoner or a prisoner convicted for final judgment or serving sentence by final judgment. So when you say detention prisoner, this refers to a person who is accused of crime and temporarily confined in a jail or a penal establishment while his case is pending or is not yet terminated. Now, when you talk about a prisoner convicted by final judgment, this refers to a person who has been convicted and his conviction is already final, meaning he has lost the opportunity to appeal his case or he maybe have appealed his case but the higher court before whom his case was appealed affirmed the decision of the lower court. Now, when you say jail or penal establishment may refer to any lock-up cell in every police station or any jail managed by the BJMP or LGU or the Bureau of Corrections. So, now the term jail or penal establishment extends to hospitals or asylums where he is temporarily confined. And the second element of the Article 156, that the offender removes there from such person or helps the escape of such person. So, the offender here is any person who is not the custodian of the prisoner. So, the custodian refers to the public officer or policeman in charge or jail guard in charge. So, having of such custody of such prisoner, if the custodian himself connived in the escape of the prisoner or the latter escapes through his negligence, such custodian will be liable. So, liable not for the crime of delivering prisoners from jail but for the crime of infidelity in the custody of prisoners. So, either under Article number 223 or 224 of the Revised Penal Code. So, thus, the offender may be an outsider or a public officer or employee who does not have the custody or charge of the prisoner, like the clerk of the penal establishment who doesn't have the custody of the prisoner who escaped, or the offender could be a fellow prisoner himself or who helps in the escape of the said prisoner, or the offender could be the policeman or jail guard in charge who is at that time of the escape of duty, meaning there is another policeman or jail in charge jail guard in charge who took over the custody of the prisoner who escaped, and the policeman or jail guard in charge was the person who removed from the penal establishment of such prisoner, or was a person who helped the escape of the said prisoner. So that would be all. Thank you.